So took the day to visit Augustus Hawkins High School out here in Los Angeles. They have the Critical Design and Gaming School, or CDAGs. Visited a classroom for an hour with some other folks talking about game industry careers, ways that those pathways work at large, medium, small kind of companies, ways that different kinds of education play into that, as well as, like I often do, how those same kind of skills can still have an outlet in their life or be useful in adjacent related careers. And that was something I really enjoy doing. That's something that one of my first talks at a conference was an Indiecade Micro talk back in 2010 about trying to advocate for how can we get game development in schools at a high school level, if only in sort of like in a wood shop or a metal shop sense, which is now seems like a dated metaphor because I guess a lot of the classes in schools anymore maybe don't even have wood shop programs like they used to for safety reasons, like when I was growing up. But that's something that I think is a great option for folks, just like science fair or something else, where for people who latch onto that as a way that they want to learn, there's so many other skills you can have revolve around that. There's so many practical types of practice that come from it that help motivate interest in creative exploration and learning math skills and so on. So one of the things that CDAG's been great about is that a lot of their programs, I've seen them do integrations between, they'll be doing creative writing in one class in a way that relates to the game that they're building in another class, which, they have this pattern out there, like their first semester is a analog game, their second semester is a digital game using Unity, and it's just been so wonderful to see that going on. And these kind of events, which I'm able to take part in part through the support of people like you who are on Patreon, is I'm able to set aside a day every now and then, sometimes as much as a couple a month, sometimes it might be a couple once every other month, depends on the schedule of schools out here, but guest speaking at schools, taking part in advisory boards, which this is one of our advisory meetings here, immediately following it. And in the middle, we had kind of a big career fair day where students walked around, talked to people at different tables about, like I say, different pathways. And one of the things I also like to talk about them too while I'm there is the same sort of thing I've been doing, which is increasingly sort of how it looks like the career market might be shuffling towards kind of like small business, online entrepreneurship, freelance contracting, juggling that as part of the transition. And that's so often part of the story, whether someone's starting a small business or going an independent game route, where they're building a transition of first working for other people and then over time increasing how much of their work they're doing that the income comes from, that's their own as opposed to somebody else's. Same path that I use. I know I brought up the graph the other day at the IGDA talk for Jake Burkett's pathway, just because I think it's such a strong concept for how increasingly our work happens. And even at the career day, also met like an architect. That was also kind of her pathway, where she initially had been working at giant companies. So those fell apart for reasons that beyond her control, but then sort of shifted into doing small business, one-person shop. Same thing for another folk who's working over at a metro company where, she's constantly building her outside portfolio platform, doing art, graphic design outside of there. Nothing wrong with the work that they're doing there. It's great. It's amazing, but it's at risk for reasons beyond any one person's control. Public funding, factors about decisions of changes in platforms and so on. And that these are things that I think the next generation for us has to be aware of as part of their core skill sets and understanding of the world. As much as my dad has enjoyed the same career at the same company, a solid one, but for like 30 years. That's just not the world that a lot of us even have now, let alone the one that kids now in high school are going to have by the time they're out of college. We're not sure what it's going to look like, but we're pretty sure it's been going the direction of more contract work, more sort of juggling, more short sort of turnaround between 2 years of one job, 2 years in another, kind of hopping in a way that used to be sort of not favored. Now is either a necessity because a lot of industries we're in have a lot of disruption going on, or it's something that becomes wise to get promotions, where I think I've talked about before in the past, a lot of the ways you get pay increases anymore is that you have to jump between companies. They tend to not reward loyalty, they reward outside experience. But anyway, so these are some of the thoughts. Again, I want to help, if you want to help me help other people, and the work that I do out here, volunteering with schools, going out to career days, speaking to classes about pathways, careers, how the market's changing, and so on. You can help make that possible with a little bit of support on Patreon, even $1 pledges. And there was a great push for this on Twitter recently. Even $1 pledges, they might not feel like they make a lot of difference. They really do to us as creators who are out there trying to, with a cause, with a mission, trying to make this stuff happen. It really, really helps just having additional people out there kind of have our backs and following along our story as we try to make this happen. So if you're already supporting on Patreon, thank you so much. If you're not, that's an option. I'll have a link down below. It's patreon.com/gamketo. As always, have another video for y'all tomorrow. But thanks again to those of you who helped make my trip to Augustus Hawkins possible.